All right, I will say good morning. Let us begin by thanking our sponsors, our Talmud Torah sponsors, for the month of Sivan. Naftoli and Chava Tilson from Eretz Yisroel, thanking Naftoli's Chaver Benjamin Wohl for introducing him to the Daf. May Hashem bless us all to finish the Daf Yomi cycle together and celebrate with the Siyum in Eretz Yisroel. To thank Baruch Meir and Rena Dubin. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu continue to protect our brothers and sisters in Eretz Yisroel, and may all of our children remain safe and complete their year of learning with a deep connection to the land and to Hashem's Torah. Amen. And our week of learning sponsors, Alan and Sherry Steinmetz, in commemoration of the yahrzeit of Alan's mother, Chaya Bas Reb Meir, and to Jeff and Debbie Schwartz for a successful procedure and complete recovery in Eretz Hashem. And a day of learning sponsorship today, the Ringo, Ram, and Fine families in commemoration of the yahrzeit of Nachum ben Shlomo Meir Zichron Livracha, and the Daf Yomi sponsorship to Melanie and Milt Gertner for a refuah shlema for Tzvi Levi ben Devora. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, all of the neshamas will have an aliyah. All those who require a refuah should have one together with Kol L'chol Yisrael, and that indeed we should be zochem Eretz Hashem to make our siyumim in Eretz Yisrael together. All right, so with that, let us begin. I'm very excited. Mashi, can I just borrow just for a tissue? I'm sorry. Thank you. Perfect. Thank you. All right, so we have an incredible daf ahead of us today. Excuse me. We are picking up today's daf is Mem Gimel. We left off the bottom of Mem Beis Amud Beis. Anything and everything you ever wanted to know about Para Aduma, we in Eretz Hashem are learning in this sugya now. To continue on some of the interesting intricacies of this particular halacha, we are picking up Mem Beis Amud Beis 42b. I believe we left off 2, 4, 6, 8 lines up from the bottom. V'hotziosa. So the pasuk says, "You shall take out the para." So what do we learn from there? Shelo yotzi acheres ima. This teaches us that halacha l'maisa, you should not go ahead and take out another para aduma with the one that is currently being shechted. Now, both say we're going to see. Interestingly enough, the Gemara says, "Kidisnan." Let's see. Lo haisa parot zelatzeh. So we'll say, let's say the para aduma does not want to go out to harazesim. Understandably so, by the way, right? It's not so pashut for the para, right? So the para aduma doesn't want to go out, so you need to coax it. So how do you coax it? You want to bring another para with it. So I think it's just a para outing, right? The para picnic. So what happens? Emotzin imo shchora shelo yomru shchora shachto. So we'll say, interestingly enough, you can't take a black cow with it. Now, by the way, black doesn't mean black, black doesn't mean black, but black just means what? Any cow that's not a para aduma, right? So you can't bring another non-para aduma cow with it. Why? Ultimately, shelo yomru shchora shachto. Because we'll say there's a concern. What's the concern? If people see you leading out a para aduma together with a para shchora, people may erroneously think that halacha l'maisa you are shechting the para shchora. So in order to avoid that, when taking out the para aduma, you can only take out a para aduma. Similarly, again, the emotzinim aduma, and I will say, so why don't you just go ahead and take out 2 paros adumos? Should that not go ahead, right? You could just do that. To which the Gemara says, interestingly enough, shelo yomru shtayim shachto. So we'll say, this is very interesting. You are not allowed to shecht 2 paros adumos at once. This goes back to what we learned yesterday, that para aduma cannot have any hesach hadas. There cannot be any lapse of awareness. There must be complete, unadulterated concentration. So even the act of simultaneously shechting 2 paros adumos would be considered a lapse of concentration regarding the one primary para, which is very interesting. So Rabbi Omer, lo men Hashem uzeh, Rabbi says, I agree with you about the halacha that you can't go ahead and take out either 2 paros or 1 para aduma, 1 para shchora, but for a different reason. Mishum shenamar osa levada. Because the pasuk says you take out osa, the para, and again that's singular, which teaches that I can only take out 1 para, just the para aduma and nothing else. The Tanakama haksiv osa. But the Tanakama. So why doesn't the Tanakama darshan this same pasuk? To which the Gemara says, "Man Tanakama," because who is the Tanakama? Rabbi Shimon. Interesting, if the Tanakama is Rabbi Shimon, and I both say, what does Rabbi Shimon say? The Darish Taimei Dikra. So I both say, this Rashi points out over here that this is a fundamental machlokas in Bava Metzia regarding Darshinon Taimei Dikra. in general, when looking at a pasuk, do we analyze the reasoning for the pasuk? Now, where does this come up? The Torah says, "Lo sachbo beged almana." You are not permitted to go and take as collateral the garment of an almana. Now, what's the concern? The concern is that, remember, again, when you take, the almana is poor, and therefore, again, when you take the collateral, let's say you go ahead and you borrow her shawl. So every single morning, the halach is you're going to have to show up at her house to give her back her shawl so she could use it by day, and then you could take it at night. Well, what's the concern? The concern is that if you're showing up at an almana's house each and every day, it could look like something illicit is going on. See, interestingly enough, Rabbi Shimon holds that therefore the Gemara says, so what about a rich almana? What about a rich almana? Where halacha l'maisa, again, you don't have to give her back the article of clothing every day because she has plenty of money. So Rabbi Shimon says, the prohibition doesn't apply to a rich almana, right? But the other opinions, Rabbanan say it does. Why? Because Rabbi Shimon darshan's time of the Rabbi Shimon darshan's the reasoning for the mitzvahs, and ultimately the Tanna Kama does not. So the Gemara says, the first opinion mentioned over here is Rabbi Shimon, the second was the Tanna Kama. My ben Ayobo say, what's the nafkamina between them? Ika ben Ayob, top of Mem Gimel, the apik chamor bahada. So I'll say, interestingly enough, the nafkamina would be, what happens if in order to get the para duma to go out, you take a chamor, you take a donkey. So we'll say, now listen to this. So if at the end of the day, look at Rashi just a moment, top of Mem Gimel, the apik chamor bahada, the Tanakama shari, the leka shema yomru, the Rebbe aser the ha'osaksiv. Sirbo says it's very interesting. So can you go ahead and get a para aduma to come out by bringing a donkey with you? So it depends. According to the Tanakama, it should be permitted. Why? Because no one's going to think that you're shechting the donkey along with the para. But according to Rabbi Shimon, according to the Tanakama, who's Rabbi Shimon, that should be permitted because no one's going to think you're shechting the chamor together with the para. But according to Rabbi, ultimately it'll be aser because the pasuk says osa, and osa teaches me that all I could be focused on is the para and nothing else. Okay, incredible. V'shachat osa, so the Torah says, V'shachat osa, shelo yishchot acheres ima. Ultimately, the pasuk says, you shall shecht it, and not anything along with it. Lefanov. So we'll say, what about the word lefanov? L'rav shelo yasiach daitu imenu. So we're just darshaning the parsha of para aduma. So what does lefanov teach me? According to Rav, lefanov teaches me that I cannot have a lapse of awareness. Mimena, what does mimena mean? The Shmuel sheyehe zar shochet ve'elazar roa. So mimena teaches me, according to Shmuel, that a zar, a non-Kohen, is permitted to shech the para aduma, and Elazar, the Kohen, ultimately again just has to go ahead and. I'm sorry, let me read that again. Lefanav, l'rav shelo yasiach daitu mimeno. So when it says lefanav, according to Rav, that means that the Kohen cannot have a lapse of awareness. L'shmuel, shehezar shochet ve'elazar roa. According to Shmuel, so lefanav teaches us that what? That a non-Kohen is permitted to go ahead and shech the para aduma, and Elazar just has to oversee the process. V'lakach Elazar hakohen midama be'etzba'o. When the pasuk says that Elazar the Kohen shall take from the blood with his fingers, the Shmuel la'abdure la'Elazar. According to Shmuel, it means that although shchita is kshera bizar from the blood application and on, must go back to Elazar hakohen. The Rav have a miut achamir. According to Rav, it's an exclusion after an exclusion. Ve'ein miut achar miut ela l'rabos. And I will say in general, whenever you have a miut achar a miut, right, one exclusion after another exclusion, it only comes to include. What does it come to include? Da'afilu kohen hedyot. Even a kohen hedyot is permitted to go ahead and do this process of the paraduma. So the pasuk says again, the kohen shall take the cedar wood, the hyssop, and the red wool. The Shmuel da'afilu b'kohen hedyot. According to Shmuel, it comes to teach me that even a kohen hedyot is permitted to do this. The Rav itzterich sakadaitcha. According to Rav, it's necessary to teach you as follows. Sakadaitcha mean because I would have thought kevan delav gufa deparanin hu loli boy kohen. I would have thought that because this process doesn't have to do with what we call the guf of the para, right? Remember again, these are kind of just the accessories to paraduma. Maybe it doesn't require a kohen at all. Kamash molan that it does. Good. The chibes begadav hakohen. When the pasuk says the kohen shall launder his clothing or shall immerse his clothing, what does this mean? Bikihuno. Right? That halacha lamaisa, the kohen must wear his big day kahuna. I will say this is very interesting. Where the Gemara is suggesting over here, I need a specific pasuk to teach me that the kohen must do the process of the para aduma in his big day kahuna. So whereas Rashi points out over here, Haikra, if you look at Hakoin Bikihuna, it's almost right across in Rashi, a little bit down, Haikoin Kra Yiserahu, the Lo Havele Lemichtav, Ela V'chibeis Begadav, Va'ana Yedana Daha Da Aribe Kai, El Lemismach Koin Abegadav Kilomar, Shebe Big Day Kahuna Nazis, V'lo Big Day Chol. And I will say, this is very interesting. Why does the Torah have to go out of its way to say that Para Duma has to be done with Big Day Kahuna? This goes back to what we learned yesterday. We will say, what is Para Aduma? What is Para Aduma? It's a process, not an avod. So remember again, we normally associate the obligation for Big Day Kahuna with avoda. But again, halach l'maisa, this is not avoda. I'm an after I don't need big day kuna. Kamash malan I do. V'tamei hakohen ad ha'erev. So the pasuk says the kohen shall be tamei until the evening. Kohen bikihuno lidoros. That phrase teaches me, interestingly enough, that the obligation for big day kahuna doesn't just apply by the first paraduma, but it applies for all subsequent paros adumos as well. So hani chalaman the amar ledoros b'kohen hedyot shapir. So this makes sense according to the opinion who says that for future generations the paraduma could be done by kohen hedyot. Elaman damar ledoros b'kohen gadol. But both according to the opinion who says that for future generations the paraduma is done by kohen gadol. Hashta kohen gadol ba'inan biki huno mibai. Both say if halacha l'mais you require the kohen gadol, then it goes without saying that of course you need big day. In other words, we'll say the Gemara kind of takes it for granted that if you're going to be required to have the Kohen Gadol perform the avodah of Paraduma, certainly it has to be done with big day kahuna. To which the Gemara says, you're right, in Milsa da'asi b'kavachomer, tarach v'kasav lakra. But I will say it's not uncommon sometimes for even something that could be learned out through a kavachomer, through a limud, to still have a pasuk come to teach it to me. Good. Va'asav ish tahar as efer ha'para. So I will say the pasuk says that the ishtahar, a person who is ritually pure, will come and collect the ashes of the paraduma, v'hiniach, and he will place it. What does this teach me? Ish lahach shir es hazar. The word ish comes to teach you that even a non-kohen is permitted to go ahead and collect the ashes. Tahar lahach shir es ha'isha. And Torah comes to tell me that even an isha is permitted to go ahead and do this. V'hiniach, and he shall place it. Mi sheyesh bo das lahaniach. This comes to teach me someone who has das. Right? It has to be someone who has das is the one who places it. Yotzu cherish shota v'katan she'ein bahen das lahaniach. It comes to exclude someone who lacks mental capacity, that such a person cannot go ahead and collect and place the ash. So it's not hasam. Let's analyze this. Hakol ksher in the kadesh. Everyone is fit for kiddush. Now, both say, remember again, kiddush is the process of pouring the water on the ashes and mixing it together. So everyone is fit for kiddush. Chutz mecheresh shota the katan, with the exception of the cheresh shota the katan, meaning if you have to have capacity. Rabbi Huda machshir b'katan uposal b'isha bandrogenous. Rabbi Huda says that a katan is permitted, but an isha and an androgynous is not. My time of the Rabbanon. What's the reason of the Rabbanon? Dichsiv v'lakchu latame me'afar streifas achatos. Hanach de pasli lecha ba'asifa, pasli lecha b'kiddush. Anyone who is puzzled to collect the ashes is puzzled to do kiddush. We're going to remember, kiddush means the process of pouring the water on the ashes and mixing them together. V'hanach de achshiri lecha ba'asifa, and anyone who is kosher to do asifa, Achshari lecha b'kiddush, is fit ultimately to do kiddush. Rabbi Huda imkein limakra v'lakach. Rabbi Huda will say, if that's the case, let the pasuk say v'lakach. My v'lakchu. Why does it say plural? Dafilu katan de pasli lecha hasam hacha kasher. To tell you that even a katan who was unable to engage in the previous process is permitted to do the kiddush. To which the Gemara says, Isha mina, how do we know the din of Isha? V'nasan v'lo v'nasna. Because the pasuk says v'nasan male and does not say v'nasna, thereby precluding a woman from engaging in this process. V'rabanan, ikasav rachmana v'lakach v'nasan. And the Rabbanan will say like this, if the Torah would have said v'lakach v'nasan kind of in one phrase, you will take and you will place, hava amina, ad shakel chad v'yoiv chad. I would have thought that it's the same person who has to collect the ashes as the one who places the ashes together with the water. Therefore, kasav rachmana v'lakchu. Therefore, the Torah says v'lakchu, plural, namely, I don't need the same person to gather the ashes and to ultimately do kiddush. Because of rachmana v'lakchu, if the Torah would have just said v'lakchu, plural, because of rachmana v'lakchu v'nasnu, if it would have said v'lakchu v'nasnu, they will take and they will place, plural for each, havamina, ad the shakli tray, v'yavi tray. I might have thought, interesting enough, that you need two people to go ahead and collect the ashes, and then two people to mix the ashes with the water. Therefore, kasev rachmana v'lakchu v'nasan. Therefore, the Torah says v'lakchu plural, v'nasan singular, to teach me what? Da'afilu shakli tray v'yai v'chad. That even technically speaking, if it's two people who take, right, two people who collect the ashes, and one person who goes ahead and mixes the ashes. So I'll say the idea being, it does not have to be the same people who do these processes. So you could have one person collecting the ashes, another person going ahead and mixing the ashes with water, and you could even have two people engaging in the process of collecting the ashes as well. Good. V'lakach ezo v'taval b'mayim ishtar. So the pasuk says, he shall take the hyssop and immerse it in water, a pure person. So we'll say, so the idea being over here, this is talking about, remember again, the way you sprinkle the waters of the para aduma is you immerse the hyssop plant, right, in the water mixed with the ashes, and then you sprinkle it upon the person who is tamei. So v'lakach ezo v'taval b'mayim, you'll go ahead and you'll dip the hyssop plant into the water with the ashes of the para aduma, ishtahar, and it must be a person who is tahar who does this process. So the Gemara says the Rabbanan, they will say, why does it have to say ishtar? The Rabbanan ish v'lo isha. According to the Rabbanan, ish comes to teaching that only a man can do the sprinkling, a woman cannot. Tahar, why does it have to say tahar? Lahachshir esakatan. This is interesting. According to the Rabbanan, tahar comes to teach you that even a katan could do it, a male katan could do it. Ol Rabbi Huda, ish v'lo katan. According to Rabbi Huda, he uses ish. Ish teaches me that it has to be an adult and not a katan. Tahar, lahachshir esa isha. Well, so interestingly enough, by the sprinkling itself, it is a machlokes between the Rabbanan and Rabbi Huda. The Rabbanan say a woman cannot do the sprinkling. Rabbi Huda holds that a woman can do the sprinkling. Says the Gemara, really, does Rabbi Huda hold that a woman can do the sprinkling? After all, the Gemara says, Meisar is a kasha, hakol ksherin lahazos, everyone is fit to sprinkle the waters of the paraduma, chutz mitumtum va'adrogenous v'isha v'katan. Vadrogenous v'isha. So we'll say, the Gemara says, everyone is fit to go ahead and do the sprinkling of the paraduma, except those who are not. Tumtum, androgynous, and isha. In other words, you have to be male. You have to be a man. So therefore, anyone who's not definitively male, halacha l'maaseh, cannot do the sprinkling. However, the katan sheyesh bodas, but if you have a male katan who has capacity, isha misayaito, a woman could assist the katan in doing the sprinkling. So the Gemara says, Umaza, and he does the sprinkling. Now here's what's interesting. Now remember again, see here, we just got finished saying that Rabbi Huda holds that a woman is permitted to do the sprinkling. The Brisa says a woman is not permitted to do the sprinkling. And the Gemara just notes, Velo Palig Rabbi Huda. And Rabbi Huda does not argue on the Brisa. So we'll say, why doesn't Rabbi Huda come along and argue on this, given the fact that he just said that a woman is permitted to do the sprinkling? Velo Palig Rabbi Huda. Abaye says Rabbi Huda doesn't have to say anything. Why not? Kevan de Amar Mar Mashma Motzi Miyad Mashma Umashma Mamela Palik. Because I will say, remember again. I just want to point out. Remember why are we dashing all of these psukim of Paraduma? If you remember again, Abaye said, "Well, what's the challenge of the parsha of Paraduma?" The challenge is we kind of look for a system in darshaning the psukim, but as you begin to see this, Abaye said before, mashma motzi miyad mashma, some of the psukim in para aduma, ultimately one pasuk comes to exclude that which was said in the previous pasuk, umashma memela, and some psukim are just taken at face value. So apparently the section of para aduma kind of represents one of the most unique sections of the Torah from a darshanos perspective, from an analysis perspective, right? Because some of the psukim are just understood straight out, and some of the psukim literally, again, one pasuk will literally come to go ahead and exclude that which was just said in the pasuk before. So what the Gemara is pointing out is Rabbi Yehuda does not actually have to articulate his machlokes on the brisa, because the whole section of para aduma itself is one big machlokes. But ultimately, again, Rabbi Yehuda did not feel the need to weigh in again on the brisa when all of the psukim of para aduma are subject to so much machlokes. But again, it is important to understand that Rabbi Yehuda is of the opinion that a woman has the ability to do the sprinkling of the ashes of the para aduma. Pretty incredible. So the Gemara goes weiter. We're not finished. The Hiza hatar ala tame. So we'll say the pasuk says that the person who is tahor will go ahead and sprinkle the waters on the person who is tameh. Now, here's what's interesting. Tar michlal shu tameh. Now, here's what's interesting. When the pasuk says that a person who is tahor will go ahead and sprinkle on a person who is tameh. Now, do you have to say a person who's tahor? In other words, if you don't say anything, what's the presumed state of a person? What's the presumed state of the sprinkler? If you say nothing, it's tahor. Right? So don't say. In other words, in general, in halacha, the presumed state of a person is tara, right? So all you have to mention is a person who's tamei. So all you have to say is v'hiza al hatame. He will go ahead and sprinkle on the person who is tamei. The fact that you're calling the sprinkler tahar, listen to how strange this drasha is. The fact that you're calling the sprinkler tahar tells us that what? He must possess some level of tumah. Right here, Michlal Shu Tameh. Now, what does that mean? Limeid al Tvul Yom Shekasha Bapara. What does it teach me? It teaches me that halacha l'maisa, a person who is a Tvul Yom. Well, let's remember again, who's our Tvul Yom? Tvul Yom is a person who contracted, usually like a lower level of tumah. Well, the truth is, it can be anything. The idea is he went to the mikvah by day, but still requires what? Herav Shemesh, nightfall. So I will say, you learn from here that a person who is a Tvul Yom is fit to go ahead and be the sprinkler, right? Be the sprinkler for the Parmesan. I will say, and I remember again, this references us back to the beginning of Maseches Yoma, because if you remember again, what's one of the first things we learned in Maseches Yoma? I will say, remember again, we learned about this. What would they do for the guy, for the Kohen, who was going to run the process of Paradum? Remember again, what would they do with him? Remember? They would purposely be metame him. Remember this? This is incredible. They would purposely be metame him. Why? In order to go ahead and show the tzdukim that they were wrong. Because the tzdukim felt that a tvul yom is not permitted to engage in the process of paraduma. So in the Beis Mikdash, they would do something dramatically enigmatic. They would take the Kohen who was ready to go do the paraduma. They would put a sheretz in his hand. Hey, hold this, right? He would hold the dead sheretz. He'd become tameh. They'd immerse him, and then when he had the status of a tzvul yom, then and only then would he do the process of paraduma. But remember again, what was the countermeasure to ensure the sanctity of the paraduma process, that people shouldn't treat it lightly? Kli galalim. Remember again, what type of utensils did they use for paraduma? Only utensils made of manure, right? Utensils that were not mekabel tumor, stone utensils that were not mekabel tumor. That was the countermeasure, right? Because they were concerned that if halacha lamaisa, a tvul yom, did the process of paraduma, people might begin to take the process lightly. So in order to counteract that, they were machmir in other areas. In any event, here's the drasha for it. V'hiza hatar ala tameh, tahar mechlal shehu tameh. The fact that it says the person who is tahar will go ahead and do the sprinkling indicates to us that the person who's doing the sprinkling must possess some level of tumah. When I say must, doesn't have to, but it's saying the fact that we're calling him tahar indicates that he possesses some level of tumah, teaches us that even a tvul yom is fit to go out and do a paraduma. But I just want to point out, it's hard to kind of keep track, like what's halacha l'maisa in the sugi because so much machlokes. But I will tell you, this piece is halacha l'maisa, that a tvul yom is kashef haparaduma. And also remember again, we saw in the beginning of the Masechta that Rambam Paskins, in fact, they dafka were metame the Kohen, who went ahead and did the process of paraduma to make him into a tvul yom in order to hotzi miliban shal tzukim. So pretty dramatic. Amr Basi, ki hava be Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lakish. Amr Basi, ki hava ba Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lakish bepara. When Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish would study the sugya of paraduma, lo maski minei, they were really unable to kind of bring out conclusions. So I will say, now what does this mean? Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish were learning through the sugya of paraduma, and their goal was to kind of like extract principles. What are some guiding light rules that would help us darshan the entire section? And as we've just seen, because we've just analyzed the entire section of paraduma, what don't you really have by paraduma? Guiding light rules, right? Because remember again about saying the way again, this is what's exciting about this section is the whole section, the whole parsha is exclusions, inclusions, and everything seems to shift one pasuk to another, which also I was thinking about. Let's finish this. So the Gemara says, when Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lakish darshan the section of paraduma, lo maski minei, they were unable to really extract guiding light principles, rules from it. Ela kemai demasik talo mi beikarcha. They were unable to extract anything from it any more than a fox is able to extract from a plowed field. So I think that it used to mean a lot more during the Gemara, that expression, right? So what's the idea? The idea is that once the field has been plowed, so whatever food the fox would have gotten from the field, whatever insects or anything else, are no longer there. So just like when a fox goes through a plowed field, there's very little to eat. Like says, so to Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lakish, when they went through the section of Para Aduma, generally I both say the way we like to work in halach is we take a section, we like to create rules and principles, and based on those rules and principles, we go ahead and we darshan the entire section. They tried to do that with Para Aduma, and as you've seen, although we beautifully and successfully darshan each section, the rules, there aren't really rules that allow you to darshan the entire piece. Each pasuk is kind of darshaned on its own. Like the fox that's trying to go ahead and go through a plowed field. Look at Rashi for just a moment. Kima demasik tala mi bekarcha, kima shemala shua beraglav kishadoris asadenir. Like a fox is able to drag up or kick up with its foot from a plowed field, the only thing a fox is able to kick up from a plowed field is dirt. Doesn't get anything else. So Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish were unable to go ahead and really extract principles. Which I will say, I think if you think about it, why did Rebbe Shalom design it this way? Because remember again, what's Para Aduma? What's Para Aduma? Para Aduma is the paradigmatic chok. Right? Remember again, right? Shlomo Melech says, Amarti lechachma achosiat, right? Rechok mimeni. Even Shlomo Melech, the great wise Shlomo Melech said, I'm so wise, yet Para Aduma I don't understand. So you see that not only are the reasoning of the mitzvos far away, but even the way the entire parsha itself is structured is dramatically different than the rest of the Torah. So it's really quite amazing. Ella Amri, the Gemara says as follows. Ella Amri, so rather the only thing they could say about the section of Paraduma was Mashma Motzi Miyad Mashma Umashma Mamela. That some of the psukim in Paraduma, some psukim come to exclude that which was said in the pasuk before, and some of the psukim are just to be understood as they are explicitly stated. Incredible. Tani Tanakami Rabbi Yochanan. So we'll say, here we go. Kol hashchitos ksheros b'zar chutz mishal para. So we'll say, Tana quoted before Rabbi Yochanan, in general, all shchitos done in the Beis HaMikdash are fit to go ahead and be done by a non-kohen, except paraduma. I will say this was like the position of Rav in yesterday's Gemara. Amar le Rabbi Yochanan. So I will say, so here the Gemara is saying, so this Tana taught in front of Rabbi Yochanan, in general, you cannot, a zar cannot shechta paraduma. Amar Rabbi Yochanan said to him, Puk Tani Libra, get that out of the base measures, right? In other words, get out of here, right? Don't teach that here. Don't teach that here, that is incorrect. Lo matzinu shchita bizar psul. Rabbi Yochanan felt we never find a shchita that is invalid when done by a zar, by a non-kohen, even paraduma. Even paraduma will be fit if done by a non-kohen. For Rabbi Yochanan lo mibari l'tana delot sayis, ela afilu Rabbi lo sayis. So both in Rabbi Yochanan, not only did he not pay attention to the Tana, who did not paskin like this, but Rabbi Yochanan didn't even pay attention to the teaching of his own Rebbe. Why? Don't Rabbi Yochanan b'shar b'shemin yotzadek? Because Rabbi Yochanan, according to Rabbi B'shemin yotzadek, his Rebbe, shchitas para b'zar psula. The shchita, right, shchita of the paraduma cannot be done by a non-kohen. Va'ani omer, but Rabbi Yochanan said, I hold kshera. It is kosher. Why? Because lo masinu shchita she psula b'zar. Because Rabbi Yochanan was of the opinion that halacha l'maisa, the shchita of the paraduma can be done by a non-kohen as well. So we'll say this whole discussion is subject to machlokes. I have to look up the Rambam. I don't remember the Rambam paskins with this, but I have to look up the Rambam. But again, this notion. No, I'm sorry. We do. I have it underlined over here. Actually, we paskin that halacha l'maisa like Shmuel, namely that shchita is. Right, that shchita paraduma bizar is psula. That's how we paskin. So ultimately, again, we paskin that the kohen gadol or the kohen must go ahead and shech the para aduma. That whereas by other shchitos, by all other shchitos, we'll say even on Yom Kippur, where halacha l'maisa, again, everything has to be done by the kohen gadol. Technically speaking, shchita of the par is shchita of paro, shchita of the par of the kohen gadol is kshera bazar. But however, shchita of the para aduma must be done by the Kohen. That's the Rambam Paskins over here. This is found in Parak Aleph, Hilchos Para Aduma, Halacha Yud Aleph. Shchitas Para, Bizar Psula. Can't check the Para Aduma by a non-Kohen, or with a non-Kohen. Good. So we'll say that concludes that Sugya Para Aduma. Again, there's a lot more. Again, there are many other open pieces in the Para Aduma Sugya, but now our Sugya here in Yoma, Meretz Hashem will come back to it. Balo Itzal Paroshnia. Both says, remember again, now back to the Mishnah. So remember again, the Mishnah said, just quickly the rest of the Mishnah. So the Mishnah now says that the Kohen Gadol comes back to his par, to his bull offering. Right? And remember again, at this point in time, he is going ahead and, I'm sorry, let me just find the Mishnah. Okay, fine. So the Mishnah says, most remember again, now he's coming to the par. So the Gemara says, Maishna bevidui rishon. So why is it that the first vidui he says, the lo amar ubnei ar am kidoshecha, umaishna bevidui sheni de amar ubnei ar am kidoshecha. So we'll say, the Gemara asks an interesting shaila. By the first vidui, so Aaron says, so right, Ana Hashem, Chatasi Avisi Pashati, or we saw the Machlokas, right, in terms of the order, Chatasi Avisi Pashati, right, Al Amcha Beis Yisrael, but he doesn't say, Ubnei Aaron Am Kidoshecha. The first vidui, the first confession, does not include the Kohanim, but the second confession does include the Kohanim. So asks the Gemara, why is that? Why is the first confession doesn't include the Kohanim, second confession does? We both say this is so incredibly profound. So the Gemara says, Tan Deber Bishmo, Kachi Midas Hadin Nosenes, because this is the right halacha. Why? Mutav Yavo Zakai V'Yechapra Ala Chayiv V'Al Yavo Chayiv V'Yechapra Ala Chayiv. Literally translated, it is better for the innocent one to come and be mechaper on the guilty one, and not for the guilty one to be mechaper on the guilty one. What does Ibn Abba say? Before the first vidui, the Kohen Gadol himself has not yet done any vidui, right? The first vidui that he does on the par is the first vidui that the Kohen Gadol himself is doing. So listen to this. By the first vidui, the Kohen Gadol himself has not done tshuva. So therefore, again, he's asking general kapara. By the second vidui, ultimately, again, he's able to ask for his fellow Kohanim. Why? Because he's done already the first vidui. So the Gemara suggests like this. The first vidui, which is for the Kohen Gadol himself, so it's a more generic vidui. Alam, right? Chatasi avisi pashati, bimachaper an am Yisrael. After the Kohen Gadol does the first vidui, then he's done tshuva. By the time it comes to the second vidui, he can then ask for kapara for his fellow kohanim. By the comes essentially what the Gemara is saying, both say something incredibly amazing. By the time he comes to the second vidui, he is already about tshuva. So because he's already about tshuva, therefore he can ask for a kapara on his fellow kohanim. Take a look at Rashi for just a moment. Midas hadin osenes kilomar kach yafe lomar she'achar shezvada al atzmo. After the Kohen Gadol has done the first video for himself, chatasi avisi pashati, I've done video for myself for the first video, the Kohen Gadol says, then v'yei zakai, then I will be innocent, then roi lechaper al achirim. Then in the second video, he can go ahead and ask for a kapara about Bnei Aaron. So I will say, what's incredible about this? According to the Gemara, how do you perform complete Shuvah on Yom Kippur? Vidui. Right? I just want to point out, the only thing that's changed between the first video and the second video is that the Kohen has said vidui. And somehow the Gemara is suggesting that halacha lamaisa, he is zakai. Once you go ahead and you do vidui, you are innocent. You are innocent. So we'll see here what's happening over here. The Gemara is suggesting the Kohen Gadol can ask for kapara on his fellow Kohanim by the first vidui because the Kohen Gadol himself has not yet done tshuva. Only after the first vidui is done, now the Kohen Gadol is about tshuva. Now that he's about tshuva, he can go ahead and ask for kapara on his fellow Kohanim. About tshuva, all he did was say vidui. Elamai, you see from the schema the power of vidui, the power of sincere confession. That's when a person says, because also remember again, vidui is not just confession. Remember again, what is complete vidui? Chatasi ana Hashem. Chatasi lashon Rambam, parak aleph halacha aleph in Hilchos Shuvah. Hashem chatasi avisi pashati va'asisi kach v'kach v'arnichamti uboshti b'masai uli olam eini chozer ledavar zeh. That's tshuva. Tshuva, complete vidui, which says, I acknowledge what I've done. I'm embarrassed about what I've done. I realize that I did not get from sin what I thought I would get from sin. Uli olam eini chozer ledavar zeh, and I'm never going to do this again. Harei zeh bal tshuva. We'll say that is the power of sincere vidui. Now, what I do want to point out, interestingly enough, is that Rambam makes a distinction between a bal tshuva and a bal tshuva gemura. Right? Remember again, what's the difference in bal tshuva and bal tshuva gemura? Bal tshuva you could become after sincere vidui. After sincere vidui, you are a bal tshuva. Bal tshuva gemura is only when, according to the Rambam at least, when you're tested again. Right? When you're placed in the same exact situation that I sinned in the first time, but this time I don't sin, that's a bal tshuva gemura. That's complete. But I both say, you see it from here, it's really fascinating. Because if you think about it again, what have you done after you said vidui? What have you done? Right? Not really anything all that much, right? Except in articulation. But I both say, you see from here something incredibly profound. The incredible power of personalistic change. See, people often think that change is behavioral. And that's true. Ultimately, change must manifest itself behaviorally. But the truth is, the most profound change occurs cognitively, occurs emotionally. That the moment that a person says, I want to be someone different, and I acknowledge that what I've done was wrong, and I acknowledge the shortcomings in my lifestyle and in my behaviors, and I promise myself and I promise my God that I'm going to be someone different in that moment, even though nothing behaviorally has changed in my life, I become someone different. Rabbi say, how does the Kohen Gadol become a tzaddik on Yom Kippur? Vidui. That's how, well, hopefully he's a tzaddik going into Yom Kippur. Right? But Lamaisa, again, he becomes a tzaddik on Yom Kippur. Right? The first vidui, he cannot be mechaper on his fellow Kohanim, because he's not on the level. He hasn't done tshuva yet. After the first vidui, he's done tshuva. Really, what did you do? You experienced an emotionally, cognitively cathartic change. You've made yourself, Kohen Gadol, you've made yourself into a fundamentally different person. Not behaviorally, maybe your behaviors are all the same, but lamaisi, emotionally, cognitively, I am now someone different. The power of personalistic change. Behaviors are important, But Lamaisi, you can't really change your behaviors all that much on Yom Kippur, right? But you could change your gestalt. You could change your essence. You could change who you are through your vidui. It's incredible. Says the Mishnah. Shachtu v'kil mizrach. So we'll say we go weiter now with the avodah of Yom Kippur. Shachtu v'kibel b'mizrak es damo. So we'll say now you shech the par. Now you shech the par. V'kibel b'mizrak es damo. And remember again, we're going to go ahead and do Kabbalah in a utensil. You're going to be Makabel the dam in a mizrak. Mizrak means a bowl. The nostol and mishum amare. So we'll say now you're going to go ahead. So we'll say, so now we go ahead and we give the blood to a stirrer. Right? There was a kohen whose job it was to stir the blood to make sure that it would not congeal. Because remember, again, as we're going to see, there's a little bit of time between the Kabbalah and the Zrika. If you don't stir the blood, it congeals, and once it congeals, obviously you can't use it for Zrika. So what's halach? V'nos l'mishum memaris. The maris po al harobet haravi'i shebehechol kadesh lo yikrosh. So we'll say we're going to see that in Eretz Hashem, they go ahead and the stir would stand on the Rovat Haravi'i. Now, both say we're going to see what that means. The Rovat Haravi'i means the fourth step. We'll discuss exactly what it really means. The fourth row of stones. We'll discuss where this fourth row is in the Gemara. Al Rovat Haravi'i shebehechal kadesh lo yikrosh. Now, we'll say. Now, here's what's interesting. Heichal. Whenever you see that word, what does Heichal literally mean? What does Heichal literally mean? The Beis Hamikdash structure itself. Remember again. When we speak about the Beis Hamikdash, we refer to the structure and the compound. Heichal usually refers to the building, right? The building has two parts, the ulam and the heichal, right? The ulam is the large rectangular antechamber, and then the heichal is the large rectangular structure, right? They meet each other, the heichal and the ulam meet each other at a right angle. They're perpendicular to each other. So we're gonna have our large diagram by tomorrow. Right? Good. Good. Well, that was just a hint. But let's say so again. So the Gemara says as follows. So the Gemara says, we'll see where that fourth step is. So the Gemara says, Natal machta. So what happens? Natal machta va'ala l'rosh hamizbeach. So we'll say, so now again, so just see what's happening. Kohen just shechted the par. They did the Kabbalah. They received the blood in a utensil. The guy, now another Kohen is going to go ahead and stand on the Rovat Haravi. The fourth row of stones, we'll discuss in the Gemara where that is, the fourth row of stones, and he is stirring. Kohen Gadol now continues his process. What does the Kohen Gadol do? Next step, he takes a shovel, a machta. Now we'll say, shovel is really, it's not like a shovel like you're thinking about it. It's a much smaller, like handheld shovel. He goes up to the Mizbeach. And what? Upana gichalem ve'elach ve'elach. And remember again, he's going to take coals for the Ketoras. Little review. Where do you take coals from the Ketoras from? Right? Ma'arocha Kitano. The second smaller pyre, right? The larger pyre was used for animal sacrifice. The second smaller pyre was used to create coals for the Ketoras. So the Kohen Gadol now is going up the Mizbeach. And what does he do? He goes ahead, and I will say, remember, so what he does is he goes into the pyre, but he doesn't take the coals from the top of the pyre. Instead, what he does is he kind of separates the pyre a little bit in each direction. He wants to take coals from the middle of the pyre. He wants to take kind of like the hottest smoldering coals from the middle of the pyre. And now he comes down from the Mizbeach. And he places the pan with the coals on the Rovat Haravi, once again on the fourth row of stones in the Azara, in the courtyard. Again, we'll see where he places it down. B'chol yom v'yom, each and every day, b'chol yom v'yom, chote b'shal arba'as kabin u'ma'ar l'soch shlosha kabin. I will say now, generally, every day for the Ketorah service, the Kohen would go up with a shovel that held 4 kav, and he would pour the 4 kav shovel into a smaller shovel that would hold 3 kav. Now the idea of Osai is you need to have 3 kabin of coals. This way, if you go up with a shovel that holds 4 kavin and you pour it into a shovel that holds 3 kavin, you definitely will what? Will walk away with 3 kavin of coals. The hayom chote b'shloshes kavin. Today he went up with a shovel that held 3 kavin. I'm both saying the idea behind that was you're going to see the theme over here is we try to minimize the exertion of the Kohen Gadol. So certain things that we did each and every day that had more steps, we eliminate the extra steps on Yom Kippur. Ubahaya machnis, and the Kohen Gadol would go in with the same steps, with the same shovel. So the shovel that he would go to take out the coals would be the shovel ultimately again that he would take, right, that he would go into the Kodesh HaKadoshim with. Rabbi Yossi Omer b'chol yom chose b'shal sa'a u'ma'ara b'soch shloshes kabin v'yom chose b'shloshes kabin u'bahaya machnas. Rabbi Yossi disagrees. He says every day the Kohen Gadol would use a shovel that actually held a sa'a, and he would pour it into a smaller shovel that held 3 kabin. But today he goes ahead and just takes a shovel of 3 kabin. So everyone has agreed that on Yom Kippur, you're right, the Kohen Gadol is just from the beginning using the shovel of 3 kabin, and that ultimately is what he's taking out the coals with, and that is what he is using to take into the Kodesh HaKadoshim as well. Bye, Machlis. We'll stop over here for today. We'll pick up, we're stopping, we're kind of in the middle of the Mishnah. We'll pick up in Meretz Hashem with this tomorrow. Shkach, we'll say. Okay.